City TV Vancouver is a proud supporter of Pride. Happening tonight in Vancouver.
Not knowing and not touching him and not telling him that, we love him.
For a lot of us, we're trying to prepare for what comes next.
An inside look at the front line of the pandemic. We'll take you inside one of BC's COVID wards in the ICU.
This is something where we have to put the nations that are affected front and center.
The federal government says affected First Nations must guide investigations into Tk'emlúps Indian Residential School, but UN experts say that can't be an excuse not to act.
These women who are gathered here today, who had the privilege of graduating from high school, when we know 215 children never got that opportunity.
A time of reckoning for a Catholic school in Vancouver as alumni call for an apology for its founders' links to the former Tk'emlúps Indian Residential School.
This is City News Everywhere.
Good evening. There are 183 new cases of COVID-19 across the province tonight, and one more person has died in the last day. 72.4% of all adults in BC have had their first dose of the vaccine. 224 people are currently in the hospital. Of those, 59 are in intensive care.
If he doesn't make it, then I could be all alone with my children, but that's the hard part for me. That's the hard part for me. Not knowing that if he's coming back.
Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, hospitals around the world have been overwhelmed, and healthcare workers have been tirelessly trying to keep up with people needing care. Now we're getting a rare glimpse inside a COVID ward in the ICU here at Surrey Memorial Hospital. And a warning, some people may find this story hard to watch.
I've been with him since I was 17. We've been together most of our lives together.
49-year-old Joseph Trudeau has been here at Surrey Memorial Hospital for months. The father of 5 was diagnosed with lymphoma in January. And after his first treatment, he and his family contracted COVID-19. Shortly after he tested positive for the virus, Trudeau had to be moved into intensive care. He's now on a ventilator and continues to test positive for COVID-19.
My husband got sick so fast that he was a 240-pound man that now is like skinny, scale, pale man.
Manjot Kaur is a nurse in the ICU. Joseph Trudeau is her patient. She says the most difficult part about treating Joseph is that she can't allow his family to visit him.
Them not being able to come in and physically see him, I think that is quite difficult to struggle with, especially if they're awake and alert. FaceTime is one thing, but I think nothing replaces physical presence, touch, and the voices of your loved ones. So that's quite difficult.
Carla Trudeau was able to FaceTime her husband earlier this week, but she says the man on the screen felt like a stranger.
Seeing him there, like, lifeless. He would just look and look at his eyes and just gaze and gaze, and I was just like, I'm looking at this man that I don't even recognize, because he had such a good spirit.
As public health restrictions gradually begin to ease in BC, doctors here are wary. Staff have been overworked for more than a year now. Dr. Greg Haljan is head of critical care at Surrey Memorial Hospital. As vaccination rates grow by the day, he hesitates to breathe any sigh of relief just yet.
You know, it's the hope that kills you. I don't know that I'm encouraged, but I don't think we can let our guard down. We've seen time and time again these lulls, and we all get our hopes up. We let our guard down, and then we find ourselves in another wave. The virus isn't gone. It's still producing variants of concern. And, you know, from our perspective, we're just always trying to be one step ahead.
For Carla Trudeau, it's been one devastating blow after another. In addition to everything going on with her husband, on May 9th, there was an arson fire at the home they were renting in Surrey. She and her family are now living with a relative in Coquitlam. But of course, her greatest concern continues to be the health of her husband. She says she wakes up every day with the worry he didn't survive the night.
It's awful feeling. That's the hardest part for me. Like, I live day by day thinking, okay, am I going to get that call today? No. Oh, thank God, Lord Jesus. And then another night was the same situation. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Trudeau hopes her story will open people's eyes to the severity of COVID-19 and that it encourages everyone to do their part.
And I want just people to know that it's real.
In Surrey, Ashley Burr, City News.
As a Catholic, I am deeply disappointed by the position that the Catholic Church has taken now and over the past many years.
The Prime Minister blasting his own Catholic Church and hinting how far Ottawa is willing to go to ensure that the Church is accountable for its role in residential schools.
This is not for naming and shaming anyone. This is to fulfill the international obligations in terms of human rights.
United Nations human rights experts are calling on Canada and the Catholic Church to thoroughly investigate the deaths of 215 children at Tk'emlúps Indian Residential School. One UN special rapporteur says Canada is obliged as a democratic state to thoroughly investigate what happened at Tk'emlúps and other schools like it.
There is a general obligation under the international law to promote and protect human rights, and the duty of protect involves not just the prevention but also investigation and to give redress for victims of abuses and human rights violations.
International attention is now on the discovery of the remains of 215 residential school students announced by Tk'emlúps Secwépemc last week. Cookbee Chief Roseanne Cashmere says she's been meeting with communities that may have had children among the remains. The talks are still in an early stage and it's not yet clear what shape a more formal investigation may take.
You know, those were, again, all initial discussions on where we're at and some of the calls to action that are in place and kind of, you know, what some of those next steps would be and, you know, the collaboration that is very much needed.
Cashmere adds that the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, which ran almost half of Canada's residential schools, has yet to release any records about the school. The federal government says it's waiting for the communities directly affected to decide on next steps.
It doesn't mean that we won't be involved. It probably means more work. But to have the federal government at the front of this sort of betrays the importance to have Indigenous communities at the forefront.
Is the prudent way to proceed. Having said that, that not should become an excuse for no move on. No, the responsibility is in the hands of the state.
In Ottawa, Shaoli Lee, City News.
Now, before we have to start taking the Catholic Church to court, I am very hopeful that religious leaders will understand that this is something they need to participate in and not hide from.
The Prime Minister hinting Ottawa may take the Catholic Church to court over its role in residential schools.
As a Catholic, I am deeply disappointed by the position that the Catholic Church has taken now and over the past many years.
Strong words coming a week after the discovery of 215 children buried in unmarked graves at the Tk'emlúps residential school. Human rights experts at the United Nations now want Canada and the Church to investigate Tk'emlúps and other schools.
I directly asked His Holiness Pope Francis to move forward on apologizing, on asking for forgiveness, on restitution, on making these records available, and we're still seeing resistance from the Church.
And it's not just the Vatican wiping their hands clean of the atrocities. The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops declined an interview with CityNews, but shared this statement. Each diocese and religious community is corporately and legally responsible for its own actions. The Catholic Church as a whole in Canada was not associated with the residential schools, nor was the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. As the residential school discovery reverberates around the world, the federal government is looking at all options to address the tragedy. In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
To hold your institution to account. That just gives me a whole new way of thinking about the institutions that I'm a part of, so that these women who are gathered here today, who had the privilege of graduating from high school, when we know 215 children never got that opportunity.
Alumni at Little Flower Academy here in Vancouver have held a ceremony to acknowledge the lives of those 215 Indigenous children who were recently found in Tk'emlúps. There's also a call for their school to do more to acknowledge its past. Gathering at the front of the school, former students took part in a smudging ceremony. Many brought teddy bears and other stuffed animals, stopping to reflect as they kneeled before candles and laid down bouquets of flowers to remember the Indigenous children who never came home from Tk'emlúps. This was organized after students learned that the order of nuns who founded their school, the Sisters of St. Anne, also staffed the former Indian residential school in the interior, which has prompted so much national reflection. Abigail Beliski is a former student of the academy.
I don't think any of us here who are not Indigenous can even begin to comprehend the sorrow and the pain that the people are going through.
Some former students want the school itself to apologize, or at the very least press the Sisters of St. Anne to say sorry again beyond a previous apology in 2014. Principal Diane Little says the school will make efforts to acknowledge its past and will go beyond the BC curriculum when it comes to providing education about Indigenous history and communities. But she says the Sisters of St. Anne no longer run the school, and she's not willing to speak for them.
The apology, to be authentic and sincere, would have to come from the people that ran the residential schools, and I cannot speak on behalf of the Sisters or the Catholic Church or any other organization that was involved in the residential schools.
For City News in Vancouver, I'm News 1130's Martin McMahon.
This is genocide. These are mass graves we are talking about.
Manitoba First Nations are asking help in assisting with the search for buried missing children and for justice against anyone, if found criminally responsible for their deaths.
Today marks 1 year since an Indigenous woman from Vancouver Island was shot and killed in a confrontation with the RCMP in New Brunswick. A small gathering demanding justice was held in front of the BC legislature to honor Chantel Moore, right next to the growing memorial honoring the 215 children whose remains were found on the grounds of a former residential school in Tk'emlúps. Police say Chantel came at them with a weapon during a wellness check at a hotel in the community of Edmundston, and that's why she was shot. But her family is still waiting for answers and wants to know if the RCMP officer involved will be charged.
Chantel Moore, she had 7 bullet wounds in her body and a broken arm and a broken leg. And how does that count for a wellness check? So, I think something sinister happened to Chantel before she was murdered like that.
Chantel's family has a meeting with their lawyer in the Crown next week. They are asking people to wear yellow today to honor her and other Indigenous people killed by police in 2020. Well, after a long night trapped on a cliff face, a climber stranded on the Tk'emlúps Chief is safe. Search crews were called out last night when the man got stuck during the climb near Squamish. Other climbers alerted rescue crews after they were not able to free the man themselves. They ended up rappelling crews down a couple hundred meters down an area called Baseline Ledge to help the man.
A road rage incident goes viral.
Jaw dropped. I had to stop in the middle of the road because I was like, this is not happening.
What led up to the events?
After more than a year of COVID-19 restrictions, it seems many British Columbians are keen to hop in their cars and go on a road trip. This is what we're hearing from one association that says a strong majority of us just want to get out of Dodge. The earliest provincial travel restrictions will be lifted as June 15th, and they're based on a number of factors like vaccinations. But some of you have tweeted to say you've already made plans. You're going backpacking on the Sunshine Coast, you're taking your kayaks on the road, you're planning to go to Whistler and the interior, just to name a few. Where would you go?
We're thinking Kelowna, probably some wineries.
We don't have anything planned, but I would. I mean, we like the Okanagan, but we also like the West Kootenays.
No, I mean, the BC seems to be very good at keeping case counts down, and there's all the rules in place still with masks and sanitizing things, and I have my first dose, and I wouldn't be afraid to get on a ferry.
For BC drivers, we found out that 65% of Canadian drivers are basically planning a road trip as their main summer vacation. Mikhail Majernik speaks for the Tire and Rubber Association, which commissioned the survey. He says BC's average is higher than the national average, which is 61%. And there are also differences in BC based on age. The younger drivers are more likely to take a road trip. The 35 to 44, 77% of those drivers are planning a road trip. And between the younger generation, the younger audience from 18 to 24, that number is all the way up to 91. It's not as easy, though, as just getting in your car. In the same survey, a good chunk of British Columbians admitted to letting their vehicle, and especially tire maintenance, fall by the wayside. 19% of BC drivers have not checked their tire pressures at all in the past year. Obviously, are supposed to check your tire pressure monthly. He says the checks are simple and quick once you get into the habit of it. Once a month, when your tires are cold, check your tire pressure. You can find the correct tire pressure for your vehicle on the panel inside of the driver's door. Basically, adjust the tire pressure and you're ready to go. Whether your adventure is 20 or 200 kilometers away, he just hopes everyone stays safe. If we are all planning to hit the road, I think we should do that safely. So let's just check our tires, check our fluids, and let's get out there and have some safe fun. In Vancouver, Ria Renouf, City News.
Take a look at this dramatic video that shows a violent road rage incident near Leduc, Alberta, Thursday.
Jaw dropped. I had to stop in the middle of the road because I was like, this is not happening.
The video begins with the driver of an SUV pulling up beside a white truck, yelling and then punching the truck's side mirror. As the SUV driver tries to drive away, the white truck rams into the SUV, forcing it into the traffic circle and spinning it around. The two road ragers then get out of their vehicles. The truck driver grabs what appears to be a bat, and then the fighting continues on the side of the road.
Freaking out, gets back in his vehicle, and the guy in the truck just opens the door and just starts beating him in with this baseball bat, and the guy in the RAV gets out on the passenger side and just starts running.
Brittany Bagnall was in the car right behind them, capturing the events on her cell phone.
What is going through your mind when you're seeing this?
I was shaking. I was like, oh my God, this isn't happening. This is not real. I had to pull over and take a 5-minute breather because I couldn't believe my eyes.
Bagnall began shooting the video after she almost got into a collision with the SUV, saying it was that vehicle who started it all.
The guy in the RAV was in front of the guy in the truck, and he was brake checking the whole line of cars behind him. So the guy in the truck was trying to pull forward around him, and he wasn't letting him. He was kind of swerving lane to lane. Finally, the guy in the truck got around, and then he came out on the shoulder and was going beside the guy in the truck and was halfway out the window screaming at him. And then as soon as I started going, he went right for me, and I had to swerve into oncoming traffic. And that's when I put my phone on and I was like, oh my God, I'm videotaping this. Something's going to happen.
Leduc RCMP have charged both drivers. The witness captured the road rage near the intersection of Highways 39 and Highway 60 south of Devon. In Edmonton, Rochelle Sufi, City News.
Hey, News 1130 is getting a new name. That's right, our sister station, along with Rogers Sports Media's other news radio stations, will be rebranding under City News. Now, the move won't happen until the fall. This change will bring our radio, TV, and digital platforms under one single brand. City News will also launch a centralized website and app to help you find all the local news you've depended on since 1996. That, by the way, is when News 1130 first launched, right here in Vancouver.
This week in science, talking microorganisms. Now, it might not feel like it during a global pandemic, but viruses and bacteria are a natural and essential part of life on Earth. Now, they're not really good or bad from a scientific perspective. In fact, some of them can be very beneficial for humans. But there's still a lot we don't know about these invisible ecosystems of microbes that are all around us all the time. And that is what a global network of scientists is aiming to change. It's called MetaSub. That's short for the very sciencey sounding Metagenomics and Meta-Design of Subways and Urban Biomes project. Catchy. Over 3 years, over 900 volunteers and scientists collected samples from transit systems in 60 cities worldwide. Now, Vancouver, Toronto did not make the list, but there's Berlin, Rio, Hong Kong, Seoul. The scientists just swabbed down high-touch surfaces like railings or benches in the subway and bus stations. This all happened pre-COVID-19, by the way. Over 4,700 samples were then sequenced and analyzed to create a kind of global microbial map. It shows that while some bacteria are consistent from city to city, each location also has its own unique set of microbes. It's like a fingerprint. The data here is so in-depth that if a scientist were to swab the bottom of your shoe, they could predict which of the 60 cities you lived in with fairly high accuracy. Researchers also found over 10,000 viruses and nearly 1,000 bacteria that appear to be brand new to science. Now, that is an awful lot of unknown viruses, but nobody freak out here. Most appear to be harmless to humans, and just because they were detected doesn't mean they're active anymore. It does bear repeating that microorganisms can be beneficial to humans. You might have bought a product with probiotics in it. That's gut bacteria. It helps your health. And viruses can be reprogrammed to fight diseases like cancer. So, big picture, all this new data could be a stepping stone to learning more about what makes us sick and what makes us healthy. With This Week in Science on City News, I'm News 1130's Curtis Dorn.
Who knew? Don't forget, Vancouver's news is always available on the radio at News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.